Gentlemen, welcome to this DGFirst Management Committee of Tuesday the 30th of September, 2 p.m. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be recorded and that the recording will be subsequently be available for public listening. First of all, can I thank John Martin for taking us up to this stage until we got a chairman. I think it was one committee meeting during that particular time, but thanks, John, for taking us through that. Can we go into the Sederunt and apologies, please?
Good afternoon. We have 9 members present. I have apologies from Councillor Crothers, Councillor Peacock and Councillor Viper.
I'd also like to welcome George to the committee even though it was on the toss of a coin, whether you won or whether you lost, I'm sure you'll decide by the end of this particular meeting. Can we go to the item 2, which is declarations of interest?
Thanks, Chair, and welcome to the role. I'm sure you'll do well. Just on the apologies, it was just a wee bit of clarity, because that sounds like it adds up to 12 members. So I was just wondering if that's correct.
There'll be a clarity about Councillor Peacock. He's absent at the moment, but we'll get that sorted out. Okay, minutes of the meeting the 15th of July. Is that a true record? Agreed, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to then item number 4, which is the Revenue Budget Monitoring Report for 2014-15 for the period ended 31st of July 2014. We'll note that this is the first monitoring report for this financial year 2014-15, and the department at the moment is predicting a break-even overall, as shown in the table at paragraph 3.2. The key issues are discussed at paragraphs 3.3 to 3.8, and overall agreed savings will be met. And if you see the appendix 2 for that. Bill, I don't know if you want to add anything to it, or Caroline?
I'll add nothing to that at the moment, but I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions from members? Ivor?
Chair, it was with regard to the roads and infrastructure. It says there's a minor underspend there. The majority of it comes from staff vacancies. Is there any reason why there's staff vacancies that aren't being filled, or is it a case of just the normal process that haven't been through the programme yet?
It's a combination of normal processes and also having regard to the work on reshaping the council. So we're filling those that are absolutely necessary, but being cautious about others.
Maya?
Thank you, Chair. In 3.8, the community safety, it said here that the community safety is higher than expected level of income from fines. I'm assuming this is car park fines, and if you're able to tell me, can you tell me where the higher is at the our end or this end?
I'll actually pass that to Caroline to answer, but if I could correct you that we do not issue parking fines. We do ask for payment for non-display of parking discs. It's a subtle but important difference.
Actually, the increase in the fines was due to the fact that the level of fines for littering, fly tipping and dog fouling went up quite significantly. That wasn't us, it was nationally. And so obviously, every time we issue those kind of fines now, we're getting more income in than we did last year. That's the main reason for the
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. It was just on the measures to be identified of 30,000, and I noticed there's a section in Appendix 2 for fleet management on realignment work. I was just wondering, I presume, or can I assume that that's what that is, and is there any more detail on where that's at?
Yes, this was to do with the fact that once we'd actually because this is so far behind being July, we'd actually realised by the kind of August monitoring that some things that had been a bit more pessimistic about have actually turned out to be a little bit less pessimistic. So actually the 30,000 doesn't seem to be too bad, so long as winter kind of doesn't hit us too hard this year and other kind of things are completely out with our control.
Any further questions? Okay, can we go to the recommendations then? Members are asked to note at 2.1, based on the position at the end of July 2014, DGFirst is projected to break even, as reflected at Appendix 1. 2.2, DGFirst are currently progressing a range of measures to ensure the avoidance of any budget overspend in the current financial year. And 2.3, progress against the delivery of the agreed savings applied 2014-15 DGFirst budget as detailed in Appendix 2. Are we happy with the recommendation? Okay. Move on to item 5. Trading Operations Monitoring Report 2014-15 for the period ended 31st of July. As with the last report, you should note this is the first DGFirst Trading Operations Monitoring Report for this financial year. The department is currently predicting a surplus of £45,000, and the key issues are discussed at paragraphs 3.3 to 3.8. Bill, have you got anything to add to that?
No, Chair. I'm happy with Caroline's assistance to take any questions.
Members, any questions? Ivor?
Just on the roads materials, surely we should be recharging that back to other departments if the cost of the materials for roads is going up, unless I've read that wrong. Then A, we don't do as much work because we can't, or B, we should be getting the money back from the parent committee.
I know what you're asking, Ivor, but I'm struggling to come up with a real answer for you.
Or maybe I've got, it says expenditure on, maybe
on direct costs.
Non-direct costs. I've maybe got that wrong way round. But if there's costs that go up on our contract costs, then surely we should be claiming those from other areas, or we can't do as much work, therefore it should be the same cost.
The answer is yes. When our costs go up, we do recharge at a higher rate. The real issue with the predicted deficit on the roads trading account is that we have less external work than we had this time last year.
Is there a potential for that external work going up then?
You said it, Chair, yes. Do you want to add to that, Caroline?
Just to say that I would bring, you're quite, it is the non-direct cost. It's not the direct materials. Obviously, they're charged on the basis of what's being used. Obviously, there is an issue with regard to some of the external contracts where we've got into a contract, and if there's variations, some of them are, obviously, we build in as much as possible, but we can't do completely. As you will see in the last sentence on that, our costing tool, which we've implemented, will actually address this problem. It's just that it's like rather a lot of things, it's taken a little bit longer than we had expected to implement, but that should mean that we will be fine by the end of the year.
Ivor?
Does that mean the costing tool will work on the contracts we're already in where we haven't allowed for that, or is it just on contracts going forward because we're already in the contracts, we can't change them?
The costing tool is designed to make sure that we at least break even on any works that we undertake. So any new work that we do, the costing tool will help us ensure that we at least break even. As Caroline said, where we're in an existing contract and the materials costs have gone up, some contracts have the ability to vary prices and there'll be an inflation index built in, and some there aren't. So we try to forecast as much as possible to ensure that we do break even, but sometimes we get it wrong.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. It was again on direct costs of materials, and I was just wondering if there's any information available now on the impact or savings that have been made now that we use only 3 different types of materials, and how that's progressing?
To be honest, Councillor, it's too early to say.
Just on that same question, and would it be pertinent to ask in maybe 3 months to come up with a report on that?
Certainly, Chair, if members wish, we can bring that back, not to the next committee, but the committee following.
The members be happy with that? Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Shall we go to the recommendations? And members are asked to note that based on the first 4 month expenditure of the trading operation for 2014-15, it's currently projected to return a surplus of £44,857. Yeah. We'll go to item 6 in, which is the DGFirst absence action plan for 2014-15. Members will recall asking for a departmental absence action plan when we considered the end of year assessment of the department's business plan in May this year. The action plan is shown in appendix, and the members are asked for any comments they may have. James, unless you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to take any questions, any comments on board. I thought I would maybe just give some stats, some up-to-date stats, just to give members a flavour of where we currently are. I think there's a feeling, looking at our current trends, that over the last 2 quarters of this year, we've flatlined as a department with regards to absence. Currently sitting about 6% for the last 3 months. The target's obviously 4, so we're still above the target, but it has flatlined. The last time we had a spike, as it were, was January 2014, which went up to 7%, and before that was January 2013, which went up to 8%. So you can see that we have flatlined. The peaks aren't there at the moment. For August itself, the top 3 ailments as such were musculoskeletal, and that was 28%. Stomach was 23%, and cold flus virus was 15%. And that's out of a total of roughly 1,450 days lost in August. As I said, we're looking at 6% over Q1 and Q2, which is similar to this time last year. Within the action plan there, we have mentioned a pilot within facilities management. Now, facilities management are one of the department's biggest employers with 1,000+ staff. So we felt it was the right opportunity and the right place to start by looking at absence in that service and going into more detail in it. So we're actually asking line managers, supervisors, team leaders to manually record absence. Let's raise the awareness on it. Let's have it every team meeting. Let's discuss it on a regular basis. We have just started that. I think, I've said in the action plan that by March 2015 we should have some sort of evidence that we could bring back to committee. And that's really, I'm happy to take any questions on the action plan. There is a lot about communication. There is a lot about looking at our trends. We get trends from our colleagues in HR and OD, and also we have an in-house person that looks at trends. I think there's also a big link to health and well-being, and I think that's something that we need to look at in the future for ourselves as a department. Health surveillance. But happy to take any other questions.
Just on the one thing with facilities management, James, the last time we worked together, we talked about the absence, which may initially be sickness, but in schools, for instance, in canteens where people are not allowed to come back because they've got to have that extra couple of days. Is that why you're doing that sort of trending?
Yeah, through your chair, yeah. Precisely that. Plus, a lot of our staff within facilities only work 38 weeks. And I think we need to take that evidence with us as well, particularly when we look at the policy that we have in place. Is it the right policy that fits the majority of those employees? And we need to look at that. So I think it's a good place to start. It's the biggest group. There's a lot of job types. There's a lot of multiple posts in there as well within facilities, and it's a good place to start.
Ivor, and then Stephen.
Chair, it's just wondering within because of the 2 or 3 days or whatever it is delay in returning, is there not opportunities for some within the training programme to actually train our staff so that if they're doing one job, they can actually go and do the cook's job, and the cook can then come back and do a couple of days till it covers the period where they haven't to be in contact with food or the patients if they're carers, etc. So is there an opportunity for that to be included within the time scale? And just within it, the stress, I noticed that there's a pattern here where we're looking to actually raise awareness on that. I would hope that was something that's taken quite seriously, because I think that's an area where if we are in tight budgets and things like that, might be getting to the stage where people are getting more concerned about what they're doing, stress levels might be building up. So hopefully that's something that is taken forward very quickly to make sure that we can identify that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Senior Manager in Facilities Management is looking at ways of being able to move staff around without having to bring in agency or bank staff. On the last one, stress is one of the indicators that we look at. The Joint Safety Committee has received some information about general mental health issues and has recommended that a mental health policy be developed for the Council by HR as a matter of some priority, because it is a concern across all departments.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the return to work interviews section in the report, in the appendix, and I was just sort of wondering, well, a couple of things really, but in terms of the monthly reports being generated from iTrent, it was really just to get a sense of what sort of sample data is emerging for that, and sort of tied into that would be the kind of picture that's emerging in terms of the hotspots, and is that something that can help target things? Is there any more data available on that just now?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, certainly on return to work, if I take that first, Thompson, we currently, for the first 5 months from April to August of this year, we're sitting at 92% with regards to return to work completed, which is quite a good. We do take it serious. We do work through return to work and then followed up with the stages. So it is something that's high on our priorities. We do quite a bit of trend analysis within our own department, particularly looking at areas, you were saying, the hotspots where there are issues, problems. We have looked at the sort of the days that people are off, and within our department, the main trend is between 7 and 20 days. Seems to be the main trend. The highest percentage of what people are actually taking off sick. So we tend to sort of home into there and look at, is it muscular? You can see there it is one of the top 3. So we provide further training, manual handling training, such like, and health surveillance as well, patient health we can be sent to for therapy.
Brian, did you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. I'm at page 17 of 30, and there's 2 mediums in there, and I'm quite baffled that it's the only mediums, the rest are all highs, and I would suggest that those 2 mediums should also be high, because HR have the knowledge, not least in a legal context, on the responsibilities that this council has to our employees. And I think it's essential that that is well understood, as well as taking care of the health of our workforce. So I would suggest that in both these instances, that these need to be both of a high priority. If officers disagree, I would like to maybe better understand why that would be the case, but I think there's an extremely high necessity for HR to be much more involved, and as soon as possible, and to ensure that managers and senior officers have the appropriate training whilst interviewing and speaking with any employee who is facing difficulties, whether it be physical or mental. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Happy to take those comments on board and escalate them up to high if committee agree with that.
Members, are we happy to move them up to high? I think at least in the short term, make sure that the managers and the team leaders get the training that's required for them. Yeah. Any other questions? Going back to the recommendations, and members are asked to note and comment on the absence action plan for 2014 that's set out in the appendix, and with those comments added to those action plans, we can go forward. Is that okay with everyone? Great, excellent, thank you. Moving on then to item number 7, the DGFirst elected member inquiry service. Similar to the last report, members asked for an action plan to address the department's performance in responding to EMES inquiries, and the action plan is shown in the appendix, and members are asked for any comments they may have. After James, do you want to add anything to that?
Just through you, Chair, again, I've just brought some stats along with me just to give you a sort of flavour. If I go back to last year, 2013-14, the overall performance for EMES from DGFirst sat about 68-69%, which was below the target. This year, 2014-2015, it's currently sitting at 81.8%. So there's quite an increase there, an improvement, nearly 20% of an improvement, getting responses back within the correct timescales of 15 days. In the first quarter of this year, we had 165 responses through EMES, and DGFirst do get the most inquiries. So we've had 165, 135 of those were responded to within the correct timescale. Happy to take any questions.
Members, any questions? Marion?
Thanks, Chair. I am kind of guilty with this one because I do sometimes kind of bypass it and I stick my hands up to it, which I'm going to try really hard to stop. The stats is absolutely fantastic. And only times I have had reason for to go through this way, I've had no problems whatsoever. But I was just curious to see how the officers feel that it's going. Do you feel it's a better way, or do you prefer that the members speak to you direct rather than through this way? It's just curiosity for my part.
I don't know. Sorry, apologise. I think officers like the dialogue with members, and we've got to be sure that we don't lose that. It's a good system. It's good to use, and we can use the information that's on it for trends and where the problem areas are. But I think and it's within the action plan, what we're trying to say to officers is to keep an inquiry comes in, but have the telephone contact with the counsellor, just so you still keep that rapport going, because we don't want to lose that. It's something that's required. I hope that answers your question.
Ivor?
I think the only time I've had an issue with EMES was where it's been a case of you put your request in and some of the information has to come from another department. Within the timescales, is that one of the biggest issues that this service has, getting answers back from other services to actually address a member's request?
Through you, Chair, again, I don't think it's one of our biggest issues, to be honest. You can have cases where it's crossed over between two different departments, but no, we do work together to get the information. Sometimes they can be complex, but the officer should be asking for the deadline to be removed. But, it's not a serious issue.
Marion, did you want to come?
Yeah, please. Sorry. Oh God, I forgot what I was going to say now. It's right out of my head. Sorry, Chair. I'll let you.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was just a question on the lagging system that works sort of in tandem with EMES, and one of the issues that seems to be ongoing, I'm not sure where it is and being addressed, is the the closure of an issue that's gone into lagging. So a lot of the time, maybe if it's a roads issue, it'll go into, you'll get a response saying that's been logged and there's a case number, but there's no closure on that, so you don't actually know when it's been done. I mean, if you happen to see the issue being fixed, that's fine, but for members of the community, there's no feedback, for example, when a certain piece of work's going to get carried out, although it's clearly logged. And the second part of the EMES is, I'm aware that a number of inquiries that get put in might go through the system, but then get referred on to an outside agency, such as Scottish Water or Amy Trunk Roads or Transerve or any number of different bodies that we work alongside. So what provision is there in the EMES system to then feed, to be able to follow that user journey all the way through if there's an external agencies involved?
Yeah, through you, Chair. On the first point, you're absolutely right. There is a sort of break in the chain, as it were. But we're currently working at and looking at the channel shift strategy within the council at the moment. And, we have a project that's within the business plan at the moment that's looking at location based. So it is looking at the whole from end to end when the inquiry comes in, closing it off and making sure that that loop has been completed. So as part of the whole channel shift, that will work, that will happen. On the second point, there is a bit of an email trail when it comes to outside bodies requesting information in, but we have that tracked through email with regards to tracking it and not lagging.
Stephen?
Thank you. I mean, on the second point, it was more to do with if an elected member reports something, then it goes out of the system, then it doesn't always necessarily come back in. It's hard to know where it is, and if that's left to the member to follow up with the external agency, or if it's left with the DGFirst or other officer to pursue. So it's really maybe a wee bit more information on that. The other thing is, well, maybe if you're able to provide detail on that first, that'd be great.
Yep, through you, Chair. Yep, absolutely. It's through training of our own staff to make sure they close off. Whatever information comes back from the external body goes back onto lagging to close it off, and that's, if there's cases where that's happened, it'd be good to maybe look at them and see where it didn't happen. If there are cases, happy to look at them.
Thank you, Chair. That's reassuring, but obviously the wee issue there is that we don't know on lagging when a case is closed. So it ties back into the first point. The second one is just to do with like the use of mobile working, and obviously there's a desire to roll that out so that people can maybe complete jobs live, as it were, and feed that back into the system. But I'm aware that the system's being developed as we speak. So I'm just wondering how far ahead is the mobile working in terms of the system that's meant to underpin it, and is there a bit of a catch-up where people are able to do that out in the field with their equipment, but not able to actually have that followed up with the back-end system, as it were?
Bill, do you want to come in first?
I'll take that one because I deal more with it than James does. We're at a very early stage with the mobile working project. Whilst the road service were very clear about what they wanted to do, I'm afraid our colleagues in Technology Solutions had only got the idea that it was one particular aspect. So there are two parts to the mobile working customer reporting system. There's the web-based system, which allows people to record online faults of a number of sorts, from flight tipping to carriageway defects. There is a system then to manage how those reports are handled. And finally, the last bit would be the issuing of instructions to deal with them and the signing off of those. Now, that's going to require a fairly significant investment in IT infrastructure within the corporate body. That will be done this financial year, and we would hope we would see mobile working linked to the customer reporting in next financial year. It's going slower than I think all of us would like, but it is starting to happen.
Stephen?
Thanks, Chair, for your indulgence. Yeah, so it's really just, I take it we're using mobile working, but it can do more than what our systems are capable of gathering in terms of information. So it's just, are we putting the cart before the horse a wee bit there, because the systems take a lot longer to catch up than the devices, which might be out of date by the time the system's ready?
I would hope not, but no, it's the infrastructure and, if you like, James's service development officer would say, it's the back office systems that we need to catch up to deal with the processing of the information and closing the loop, so that when you or a member of the public report a call, you can also be told that it was fixed at 10:30 this morning. We're getting there. We do have mobile devices within the department and in use, but not yet connected up in road service.
Okay, any other questions? Can we go to the recommendations then? Members are asked to note and comment on the electoral members' inquiry system. Action plan for 2014-15. Noted, okay. Okay, number 8 is zero waste implementation update, and members may recall some time ago asking for an update on the implementation of the waste collection arrangements once they had started in Wigton. At the time of writing the original report, only the food waste element of the new service had started, and a replacement report covering both food waste and the 2 first weeks of the alternating dry recycle and mixed residual waste collections will be circulated shortly. You also got an email last night, I presume, for this particular report, but if anybody hasn't seen it, I'm quite happy to call a sort of 10-minute recess for people to have a look at it, if that's okay with everybody. Okay. Shall we recess until 1:45? Just looking at the report, it does appear that the most serious problem was in the modelling of the routes to be used. It's also fair to say that the participation rates, certainly in the food recycling, shows that householders are keen to recycle. And I'm aware that staff across our council and DGFirst Planning and Environment and the call centre have worked extremely hard to make the new collections work. I don't know if you want to add anything, Bill and Fraser, to this report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll kick off and, as usual, leave the detail to Fraser to answer. I think what we've presented members with is a report about the problems that we've found, things that have happened. The report is perhaps light on the fact that we've had extremely good participation rates, over 80% in all aspects. And even if there have been large numbers of phone calls, it still works out that 84-85% of households have not had problems with the new service. So this is perhaps a look at the grim side, but we decided that you should know all the things that have happened. I think it's also at paragraph 3.3, what we said is that was what was supposed to be happening. Planning of the new system took a little longer. We decided collectively to avoid school holidays, and the dates were chosen. The process, as explained there, was food waste containers went out first, then food waste collection started. During the start of the food waste collection, the dry recyclate boxes were put out, and then the alternate weekly recyclate and mixed waste collection started. There were a number of issues that arose that we had very little control over, one of which was originally an external contractor was to be employed to deliver all the new containers. Nobody tendered for the work, so at very short notice, Fraser Marshall's people in neighbourhood services had to get out and deliver boxes to 15,000 households. We weren't expecting to do that. the people who manage that process are the people who are the experts in the new system, and if you like, the people who would do the education and awareness element. So we lost part of our resource, valuable resource, right at the beginning of it. We also, as the chair indicated, discovered, unfortunately quite late on, that nearly 25% of the routes in the database were, quite frankly, wrong, and that imposed a week's delay in delivering containers and rejigging the routes. We're now, this is the start of the second cycle of collection, so we've been through one full cycle of 2 weeks, they're alternate weeks. We saw a very high level of calls coming into the call centre, so much so that we had to cascade calls into the Colhorn Depot on Commerce Road in Stranraer, then to Abercrombie Road Depot in Castle Douglas, and finally to Cargan Tower to enable us to cope with logging all the calls and trying to answer. I'm very pleased to say that the number of calls has reduced significantly. And also, one of the issues with the collection of the dry recyclates is that if items which can't be recycled are put into the bins, they are left behind. And if the bin is grossly contaminated, then we just won't pick it up. We found an awful lot of inquiries coming in the first week about missed collections. People came home and thought, my bin hasn't been emptied. They had attempted to lift the bin, but the contamination was such that it wasn't. On the first days of monitoring, we were issuing around about 300 notices to households to say there was an issue. That's dropped to 50 to 60 just after 2 weeks. So we've seen a big fall in the material. Fraser has been out to see the system in operation, and he's reported that the quality of the recycle is really good. It's clean, it's good. That means we will get the top rate from the material, so the council will get a good income. As I said originally, we've tried to be completely open in the report with the things that didn't go well, but we've got 80% participation rate of people putting recyclate out and food waste out. And generally, I'd like to say that most people, most householders have been very patient with the system. And I think the other thing we've noticed is that they're really interested in recycling. Now, about a year ago, we didn't get that impression from the people, the community council. I'm happy to take any questions you may have. If I could just add one thing, Chair. This report will also be considered by Wigton Area Committee tomorrow, together with any comments that this committee may make on the report. So Fraser and I will be happy to take any questions.
Fraser, do you want to add anything to that? Or any questions? Marion and Stephen. Okay, Stephen.
Thank you. I suppose, I mean, it's good to be kept updated as this is going to roll out across the region and affect all, the whole of the region. So, but in terms of RSLs, what type of discussions are taking place with registered social landlords about receptacles in flats if they're not, you know, if they're not allowed to be kept in landings or hallways or outside designated areas? Because I'd imagine, well, there have been sort of reports where that's been a concern. And the second question would be, there's been a few reports in Wigtonshire about employees maybe being, if there's concerns about safety, where there's sharps, such as knives, tin lids and needles in the recycling. And I'm just sort of wondering what are we doing to ensure that the health and safety of the workforce has been protected at all times? Thank you.
If I could take those in reverse order. Health and safety is paramount for all the staff, and the staff are issued with protective equipment to help deal with. It is apparent, though, that a number of people have either not read the leaflets or misread them, and things are appearing in recyclers. And in the Household Waste Recycling Centre at Stranraer, things are appearing in the waste that shouldn't appear, like sharp. So there's two strands to the approach to that. One is the protective equipment for the guys doing the work, and the other is an education one, and we're looking at how best to deal with that. The RSLs, that's a process that's still going on because we're still finding problems. Fraser, I don't know if you want to add anything to those discussions.
Not really much to add. The health and safety issues would also be working very closely with the corporate that. RSLs, yes, we are working with them. We are speaking to them. There are issues regarding containers. There are alternative containers. We are looking at. There are.
Marion and John.
Thanks, Chair. I think because I am the only one in this panel at the moment as a Stranraer councillor, I think it's really important. Stranraer's kind of lost sight of what is important in this, in my opinion. There's a lot of good things that's come out of this. We've got employment, as Belly's quite rightly said, we're up to 80% of people doing the recycling. And it's a real shame, but my biggest concern was how the local staff was treated, not by DGFirst, by the way, by the general public. I had one of them actually had said to me that she was just ready to commit suicide. Now, that is bad, but I understand that was an exaggeration, but that was because she was getting abused down a line. It should never ever have happened. We all make mistakes. There has been mistakes made and the hands has been put up to it, but I think it's really important that we also see that when it's implemented into these other areas, they will have learned by the things that's happened in our area. And I will be taking back exactly what I'm saying just now to the Wigton Area Committee tomorrow. And I think it's important we show just how good this has been. And I think it's important the public hear that by the press or whatever means possible, because it's so easy for people to listen to the negative than it is to the positive. So I would be grateful if something could come out, certainly from my point of view as a local councillor, to say the good things and try and cover up, show that they have put their hands up to some mistakes. But let's face it, we're all human, we make mistakes.
Thanks, Marion. John, and then George.
I just got to agree with Marion says there. Like, there's a lot of positives in that, like especially the 80% take up. Like, we can imagine where it'll be coming for tomorrow with certain councillors. Like, they'll take the 80%, but the other 20% equals 3,000. So they'll be taking that. There's issues there. Like, it's just with the routes management. I know that was a big problem, and it was put out to an external contractor. I think. Like, is that going to have any impact on the rollout across the rest of the region? Are all these other routes got to be made sure they're all right before it actually rolls out across the rest of the region? And is there any other problem that's got to be? It's got to make the rollout a bit later than normal, than what we actually had planned.
I'll take that one if I may, Chair. Modelling for the routes for the other three areas has not yet started, but certainly we have learnt our lesson and will examine the data much more closely than we did on this. We did do checks on the data, but the fact that the routes were so wildly wrong, we missed completely. So we will take that for the next areas. Yeah.
George and Ivor.
It's just a query actually about when it does roll out into into the stewardship. I'm thinking in particular at my own village of Parton, which under this scheme will have a multitude of bins or boxes or whatever you care to call them. I'm a wee bit concerned, and so are the folk in the village actually, about leaving these things out when especially timber lorries come down the road doing more than the 30 mile an hour that they're supposed to do, put it that way. Or not just timber lorries, but all lorries. And they create a huge draft. And at the moment, it's not uncommon to see a wheelie bin after they have been emptied on a Tuesday morning, lying in the middle of the road, and somebody has to stop a car and put it back where it should be. And that's not an uncommon sight. I'm not blaming the operatives at all in this. It's just a fact that is happening. It's a wee bit worrying when we're going to maybe have a lot more boxes and containers sitting out to the fury of these lorries going past. I'm just wondering if you're going to take into account when it does come to parting, or the like of the stewardship, if you're going to take into account maybe using a communal thing, because I'm only talking here of 6 houses.
Thank you, Chair. We have tried, it's not quite an answer, Councillor Prentice, but we've tried in Wigton to be as flexible as we can to choose, within the constraints of the system, to produce options for people to do different things. It may well be that in the stewardship context, perhaps in Upper Annandale, that we need to take a slightly different approach. There will still be the same materials being collected, but that's something that we are continuing to work on at the moment. And certainly, we know that there are issues with boxes being blown by the wind and placed badly. So our guys have had some words said to them about how they replace the bins, for example. But no, it's something we're still looking at.
Ivor?
Chair, thinking back to one of your predecessors and what she would be saying just now after she sat in some offices, warning that the one thing they had to get right was the routes, because of the fact that she presided over the time when we tried to review the routes the last time. And here we are. I don't know if we learned any lessons from that route review, and we're back to the same issues here. I think it is a good news story, but you know, some of us on this side of the table as members are trying to give you good advice when you're doing this. You know, it's because we want it to be a success that we're saying you must get this right first time, because people will pick on every little problem where they can and say it's a disaster. Hopefully the lessons are learned come October when we do the review, and we don't see problems in stewardship, because I can think of somebody who will be eating a hasty track towards you to say, I told you so.
I've got absolutely no idea who you're talking about there. I'll just hand it to Bill on that one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor, we did actually learn a lesson from the route review, and at this time all the houses in Wigton were on the routes. It was just the way that the route optimisation was done to minimise the cost, as it said in the report. We ended up with 3,000 or so properties where the mixed waste bin and the dry recyclates were going to be collected on different days of the same week. Instead of being alternating weeks, it would have been 2 collections in 1 week and then nothing for a fortnight. And at the worst case, some householders would have ended up with different days for food waste, dry recyclate and mixed waste, which was something that we felt people just couldn't cope with. So it's at that point we realised the routes, whilst they were optimum, they weren't optimum in the sense of user-friendly, and we took a step back, looked at them again and reissued routes. We will continue to review the routes, and there may be changes in the future, but the most important thing was to get the service out and waste being collected routinely, so that we get the community at large used to the multi-bin source segregated collection.
Marion and Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just ask, Fraser, obviously that you're probably aware that there's an issue with the flats with the recycling. I haven't heard much how that's going. Have you any idea kind of where you are with the situation for the flats?
Yep. Our technicians are visiting flats where there are issues. There are options. Standard is the box. There are bags, trolley systems. There are options.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, it's just, I do know in Sun Street, rather, there's one Pacific block, so it's elderly, it's in it, and a couple of them are quite ill. Now, there's an issue coming up with how to get these bins out for the bin. Is there something in place that it has been said that if they want somebody to do a pull-out system, I think that's what it's called, then they need to get a doctor's letter, but is that right, or is there another way that we can look at dealing with this?
We do have the assisted pull out where our guys pull the stuff out. Yes, there has to be a sound medic. That is covered by it.
Bill, do you want to come in?
If I can just add to that, we had discussions earlier today, and we're going to speak to social work services about not only making sure that carers are informed about what is available, but also to look for any potentially vulnerable people that we can proactively help. So if we had had the resources when we needed them and they weren't delivering bins and dealing with the root problems, we would have been further on with this process. So that's the issue for us, that we're now getting to the point where we're doing things that we should have been doing a fortnight ago.
Stephen?
Thanks again, Chair. Well, it's just as a follow-on to that, in a sense. My question was really about the, well, I suppose firstly recognising the good work and congratulating Fraser's team for getting the bins out when the offer of tender wasn't taken up. But just on that, is there a potential saving there then? Because there'd obviously been a cost associated with that tender going out, and it was brought in-house, so I'm just wondering how that would maybe have a positive impact on the budget.
Go on then.
I don't know the answer to that, Councillor Thompson, I'm afraid. We were just concerned with getting the containers out to people, so I actually don't know what the costs are yet. I know how much planning and environment services are allocated for the contract, but I have no idea yet what it's cost us to issue them.
So the potentially, because there's a high activity rate of recyclates and income coming from that, there is a potential budget saving.
I think, quite honestly, it's too early to say. We are only, for people this week, for some people, it will be only the second time that the bins have been collected. So it is far too early to make any statements about the level of income.
Just sort of carrying on from the fact that the bins have to be delivered in other areas, we saw that they were delivered early in preparation for it, and I think there's one reference in here. It's maybe resulted in the fact that people have started early rather than the fortnightly, and I think the routes ended up with staff not being able to finish them. How are we going to manage that when we come to the next one, so that we're not got 5 weeks rubbish in the bins rather than the 2 weeks that should be there?
I think the honest answer to that, because I would hate to ruin people's enthusiasm for recycling, is that it's education, and we'll have to be much clearer about don't start recycling until we're ready to collect it.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. I think we've had a good look at this particular report, and I've got to agree with Marion and Ivan, John. This is a good news story, and we don't want to be putting a negative story out there of it. However, there are some issues that are being dealt with operationally, and as Marion and Bill has said, it's going to the Wigton Area Committee tomorrow for another re-look at that particular thing. Just coming to the recommendations, and members are asked to note the progress made to date with implementation of the zero waste source separate collection system in the Wigton area. And of course, those issues that have been raised will be actioned by the director and his team. Okay? Thank you. I have no other business. Thank you very much for coming along.